What's going on, everybody? Welcome to TDY, where we grow more each day. For those that don't know me, my name is Winston, but you could call me Winnie. And today I am joined with a good friend, Mariah. Mariah, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Mariah Herrera. A little bit about me. I have a background in psychology. I currently am working at a nonprofit tech startup,
Mhm.
and I just have an overall passion for holistic well-being.
That's
That's what I'm
beautiful.
here to talk about today.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to dive into a lot of topics, but
Mhm.
a couple things, right? Mariah be underselling herself. So she doesn't just have a background in psychology. What else do you got, Mariah?
So I have a total of 6 years education in
Okay.
psychology, a master's in psychology. Hopefully a doctorate later on once I can pay the government off a little bit more. But
Hmm.
that's the goal.
That's beautiful. So yeah, like we're gonna be talking about a lot of this stuff, and I wanted to bring specifically you on the pod because um, there is a lot of like misconceptions and a lot of it's mental health has kind of become like stigmatized, and I just wanted to talk to somebody that's like far enough away from culture where they can kind of like analyze things from like a top down view, but still kind of like in and around it and around like the age to be able to disseminate the information in a more digestible fashion for like our generation.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm really, really excited about this conversation. I even wrote notes. So
Me
before
too.
we jump into them, can we do our PPPs, our praise, prayer, and our practices?
Yes,
I'll go
please.
first. All right. So my praise for the week is I finally am getting a chance to go on a nice little date night with my wife. Yeah, I've been that's been putting off for a while because we have a child. It's hard to do those, but we got one coming up this weekend, which is going to be awesome.
I
Um,
love that.
my prayer for the week is uh, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Like there's like a shooting not too far away from me,
Mm.
and it's a weird state. You know, people just tote guns. I'm in Alabama, by the way, so
Okay.
praying for her safety, praying for God's grace on that. And my practice for the week to essentially just to continue what I'm doing, putting myself in attitude and a mind space to go back to school because that's happening. It's
Oh,
happening. Yeah, I'm going back for my master's.
wow. Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you. Thank you. Nervous about it. Very excited though. Very, very excited.
I'm
All right. How
excited for
about you?
you. Education is great.
Facts.
My praise for the week, I had written down I wanted to praise you for creating a human because
Oh
that's
man.
wild.
Thanks.
And then creating a human, finding date nights with your wife, and also going back to school. Like, go Winnie. You're
Thanks,
killing
Maya. Thank
it.
you.
My prayer, I would ask for prayer and creation of my idea, my little baby, the mindful minute,
Hmm.
which is what I'm hoping to start fleshing out soon.
I'm so
It's
excited for that to come on.
Thank you.
So excited.
I'm really excited too. I've been thinking about it for years, and I've always been too scared to do it. So hopefully, content will be coming out on the Mindful Minute soon. But that's also my practice for the week is being on this podcast is a practice
Facts.
in getting out of my comfort zone and talking about something that I love, but that definitely makes me nervous. So I appreciate
Hey,
you giving me the opportunity.
hey, man. Anytime, dog. Anytime. And we probably gonna run this conversation a couple times because I'm sure that like as we continue to like develop in our different ways, there are gonna be little nuances that start coming back into the picture and in and out of it. So I'd love to have you back on even before we have the conversation. I already know it's gonna be a great conversation. So um,
Absolutely.
yeah, can't wait for the mindful minute. I'm excited to have you back on the pod. You ready to jump into this thing?
Let's go.
I bet. So, what's one thing that you wish everybody would know, or one thing you wish everybody did?
Meditate.
Ooh.
Like definitely meditate. I think that it's so underutilized and it's
Mhm.
so simple, but it's been kind of gatekept in a way where a lot of people see it as like you have to be able to clear your mind and silence your thoughts and not move for like 30 minutes. And there's just a lot of different forms of meditation than that. Like for me, sitting down works really well because I'm a slow person. I like having, like being able to center myself and go inward. Some people like to meditate while they're walking, like you can focus on each step that you're taking, and then take in your surroundings. Meditation is really just about practicing awareness, non judgmentally, and acceptance. So, when on your walk, being aware of the types of steps that you're taking, aware of your surroundings, the smells around you, all of your five senses, and then using no judgment for any of it. So a lot of the
Wait.
time we'll be
I'm
like,
so sorry. You have to run
interrupt
this
me,
back for me.
please.
Wait, so
Yes.
you said being aware non-judgmentally.
Hmm.
What is it? How do you be aware judgmentally? What's the difference?
I would say that almost all the time we're aware judgmentally. At least I am. Like if we are going to have a meal, usually you'll open your cupboard and you'll look at the things that are bad for you and the things that are good for you. And then you'll make a decision based on that. And based on what you decide, you'll make a judgment on yourself for making that decision. So there's a lot of unconscious judgments that happen, that like relate back to our mood. So you might not be aware of it, but say that you're working, you go into the kitchen and you're craving that donut. And you grab the donut because you're hungry. And then the rest of the day, you're like, damn, I shouldn't have grabbed that donut. I feel bad about myself. It was unhealthy, yada, yada, yada. When you could have just grabbed the donut because you were interested in it, because you were craving it, have it, accept it in that moment, and then make a healthier choice next time. It's always about staying in the present moment and thinking about what to do next rather than reflecting negatively on what's happened or what we're observing in that moment. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess my only question about that is because I know a lot of people that like say, like live for the present, focus on the present, and that's where like the whole like YOLO thing kind of comes into play. But like when we think about like the entirety that is life, how much emphasis should we place on living in the present versus planning for the future? Because I could easily say, you know what, that I could eat this donut now and make me feel better, but I know in the long term that's going to be a bad decision. So maybe I don't want to do that because I'm more, forward
Mm-hmm.
minded than present minded.
Well, I would ask what makes eating the donut a bad decision to you?
Let's say health goals. Let's say I'm trying to lose 10
Mhm.
pounds.
Okay. Okay. So then eating the donut to you means that you're not going to lose 10 pounds?
Potentially. Yeah.
Potentially. I mean, it's one donut, right? A limited amount of calories. Or are you seeing it as I eat the donut and it results in further bad decisions?
Oh, no, I didn't even think about it in that sense. I could see how it can go down that hole. But in my mind, I would think a calorie is 3,500. I mean, a pound is 3,500 calories. So
Mm.
this 300 calorie donut right now is taking me minus 300 calories away from that goal. I have to do 300 calories worth of exercise just to burn off this donut. It might not be the best
Mm.
decision because I know that I have a kid, I got a wife, I got a job, I got a podcast. I might not be able to go to the gym for 4 hours to work off the. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
this,
fair.
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
We've got to make plans that align with our goals. Absolutely. I think when we look at it from that perspective, a lot of the time we can fall into snowball thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I eat this donut now, and it keeps me from losing that pound that I'm hoping to lose. And then down the line, what does that mean? I'm not losing that weight that I want to lose. Is that going to affect my health? Will I then not be able to play with my son? Like there's snowball effects of the negative repercussions that will happen after that. When we're in the present moment, we are aware of the fact that we have no control over anything that's happening in the future. We just have control over right now. So we make the decision of, if I eat the donut, is it going to make me feel good in the long run? Like more past this present moment, but maybe not like 10 years later? Or is this pleasure seeking activity that I do now going to be worth it? I guess like there's that decision between them. But it's less about like the shame that involved in the judgment rather than like not making the judgment. Does that make
Makes
sense?
sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. So that's what it means to experience life non-judgmentally. It's not
Hmm.
it's more so like reflecting upon yourself, not experiencing it in a way that you end up judging yourself based off of a lot of the decisions that you take.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because we end up being our own internal critic a lot of the time, and that judgment is really what depletes our energy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
actually really, really wise. And that's what meditation is?
So it's a combination. So it's the
Okay.
combination of non-judgmental awareness and acceptance. That's
Okay.
mindfulness. So that together allows you to be in the present moment. Because if you're engaging in either judgment or non-acceptance, then you're not able to live in the present moment. You're always thinking about the past or the future. For example, um, say that we already talked about non-judgment. So non-acceptance is, you wake up in the middle of the night because your baby's crying. And obviously you're frustrated by that. Like, I need to sleep. It's not his fault. You know it's not his fault, but you need to sleep and you're angry and you want to be able to sleep. So a lot of the time, you'll get up, you'll trudge into his room, help him, rock him, whatever you need to do. There's probably a mental discussion going on in your head
Mm-hmm.
where you're talking about, I wish it wasn't like this. I wish this wasn't the case. I wish you could sleep through the night. I wish whatever. We had a nanny to do this. There's always these shoulds, these wishes. We always desire the present moment to be different than what it is. And that keeps us in that negative space, in that inability to live in the present moment. If you were just to sit there in your sleepiness and look at your beautiful son and say, I'm not sleeping because of you. Well, I'm here and I love you. And in a couple of years, I'll probably get better sleep. But we're here now. And just keeping that presence and that acceptance with you
Mm-hmm.
keeps you away from those like negative thoughts and that kind of spiral thinking that can happen.
Wow. Okay. So acceptance and non-judgmental
Awareness. Mm-hmm.
awareness. Wow. Okay. Um, where did that notion of meditation just being closing your eyes with your hands like this and humming, like where did that come from? If this is like the idea of mindfulness and mindfulness meditation you're thinking
Um,
about.
I mean, definitely from like I can't remember exactly like the history behind meditation and where it comes from. But I know the history comes from like Buddhist monks and seeking enlightenment. And in that case, it is a lot of sitting down, going inward for hours at a time and learning how to quote unquote clear the mind. But even when we're doing that, we're not actually working on clearing the mind. And I think it was people who were observing the monks practicing meditation who didn't really understand the depth of it or the actual practice of it that communicated it differently. But there's a lot of people now that talk about meditation and mindfulness in its entirety, in different aspects that you can practice. So whether it's sitting down mindfulness and meditation or body scanned meditation, which is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you can do when you're sitting at your desk at work and just going through head to toe, connecting with your body and really identifying how you feel. Because a lot of the time we're disconnected with our bodies and we're not sure how we feel. There's, when you're driving and you'll kind of zone out into the music and you don't really know how you got home, but you managed to get there.
Mm-hmm.
That in its own way is meditation. It's a state of flow. Anything that gets you in a place, I believe it's theta waves because there's different brain waves. And theta waves are the waves that you get into when you're in flow. So if you're like a basketball player and you're really good at what you do, you don't have to think about much of what you're doing. You're just in and out, and you're succeeding without really moving your body or being intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a meditation within itself. So it really depends on what puts you in that mental state and what brings you into a state of calm and connection with your body. Like, can you identify anything that you do that brings you that peace?
Interesting. So I guess that's why uh, I guess that's why people like listen to music or something, throw their headphones on, close their eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like go inward to kind of find that like that state of flow is actually a very interesting concept because I felt that same thing. in like totally varying scenarios. Like I felt that while giving a presentation to a client, and I've also felt it like
Mm.
in the middle of a basketball game at the local LA Fitness or something like that. So I love how that dichotomy can exist where it might not
Yeah.
necessarily be like something that I'm completely skilled at, or it could be something that I enjoy as well. Right. The
Hmm.
idea is kind of just to I don't know. I'm trying to find
Better
it as the
yourself.
idea. Just
Hmm.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. Like I'm not good at painting, but I love to paint, and that will put me in flow. And a lot of people, if they're judging themselves, right, they're not practicing that mindfulness, that non-judgmental awareness and acceptance. They're looking at their painting and they can't get into flow because it's this is wrong or this doesn't look the way that I would like it to. But when you're practicing that, you're able to just flow and enjoy yourself and kind of escape from that day to day chaos.
Facts. And this actually takes us into like pretty interesting topic because I feel like the reason that a lot of people can't enter that state of flow or like enjoy what they do, even though they're not necessarily good at it, is and I'm gonna sound like a 40-year-old. It's because of our phones. Like it's because of social
Oh,
media, right? Like we
yeah.
see the picture perfect thing all the time on Instagram. We take 100 pictures to post one, and we compare that to everyday real life, not realizing that there's always a filter on top of that. So I guess I'm just curious, like, what are some of your thoughts on like technology's effects on the overall like mental health and as well as entering a state of flow or mindful awareness?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting because I love social media. I think it can be amazing. It can connect us in beautiful ways. It can educate masses in ways that we didn't have access to before. But it can be so toxic. And especially like you mentioned with the filters and the expectation of perfection, comparing yourself to people, it can really bring people down in their self confidence. And that state of flow that we talked about, you can even get into in something like TikTok when you're constantly scrolling, it never ends, and there's entertainment like at all costs.
Yep.
It's a bad state of flow, but it is that place where your brain goes into theta state, you're able to relax, and you don't really need to think. But that is unhealthy because then it leads to you always going to that state of flow, and there's no other, I guess, resource or outlet that helps you get there.
So
And
there's a good state and a bad state of flow. Just want to touch on that real quick.
I I would say so. I think so. And maybe it wouldn't be referred to as flow. Maybe it would be referred to as something different, but it's that same mental space where you're not really paying attention to what you're doing.
Hmm. Mind
And
numb.
mind
Mind numb.
numb. Yes, exactly.
Like when I'm feeling like crazy, like overwhelmed, I'll just go
Mhm.
like play 2K or play video games or something. And
Yes.
that's mind numb. Okay, so it's the same thing that we're talking about here. Okay.
So it's good for you. That state of distraction is still healthy, but it's not good to be in that state of distraction all of the time. That's usually when you're at your peak. You're at your threshold and you need to come down quickly and you don't have energy to do something a little more healthy for you. But maybe do that for an hour and then go back to doing something healthier for you. Um, Unfortunately, because they're so addictive, because these social media applications are created to spike dopamine, then we constantly go back to it and it becomes an addiction. So it's not only affecting our self confidence and our ability to connect with ourselves, but it also affects our dopamine levels and our dopamine balance. And then we're unable to get dopamine from healthy, normal activities.
Well, okay. But can we say because I'm trying to think like both sides of the coin
Oh,
here.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
while I understand that it could be addictive, it could be like all these negative things, and it could be positive as well. There's a threshold. We've kind of established that. I guess my thing is like we buy into it consistently. There's no way around social media. So
Mm-hmm.
is it more so if we can't cut it out, how do we join the team that we can't beat?
If you can't beat them, join them. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think just boundaries. like knowing yourself and your tendencies and trying and protecting yourself as needed. So because we know that these applications have been created to take advantage of certain weaknesses that we have as humans, being cognizant of that and putting time limits on our apps. So like it might feel like you're a child with a parental lock or something, but I
Mhm.
have limits on my TikTok app because I know that I will spend hours just scrolling because it's so interesting. But now I have like an hour limit. It'll pop
Mhm.
up on my phone and it says like, will you like to continue? And it gives me the opportunity to choose myself or choose to continue scrolling and then, suffer the consequences if need be. But it gives you an opportunity to make that choice, I guess.
So I love that. It gives you the opportunity to make that choice, and you have to live with that, regardless of whatever choice you make, right?
Mhm.
Um, how did you come up with like this philosophy? Obviously, this is something that you've put into practice yourself. Is this more like academic? Is this like lived experience? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Hmm. I would say probably a mixture of both. Because I understand the brain's craving for dopamine. Um, I know when it's being taken advantage of, and I know when I'm losing the capacity to gain dopamine from like healthy daily things. So, like, dopamine is the reward and pleasure hormone. We also get it from achievement. So, if we get challenges done, going to the gym in the morning, um, taking your supplements for the day, going on your run, those little things give you dopamine, and they motivate you to continue doing them. Um, Now, when you're using applications a lot of the time, or social media applications, and your dopamine is being spiked at unhealthy levels or abnormal levels, then the regular things like going to the gym or going on that run aren't going to give you that same dopamine release, and that means that you're going to be I don't want to say depressed, but it is like you'll get symptoms of depression because you're not able to get that dopamine, and it feels like you're hitting like a limit. So what we have to do in those moments is to do dopamine detoxes, where we basically limit the amount of dopamine that we're intaking, or things that spike our dopamine that we're intaking, so that
Mhm.
they can regular or level out, and then we can go back to like receiving dopamine from running or going to the gym.
Uh,
So because I
what,
knew
what do
that,
you,
I put the limits on the application, and then because I know that I have an addictive personality, I will just scroll on TikTok all of the time. I was like, let's put some limits.
nah, that makes sense. So what do you do for a dopamine detox? Talk to me about that.
I'll stay off my applications. I will like put bans on like Instagram, social media, all of that on my phone for like a couple of days. 24 hours is the recommendation. So if you can't do a couple of days, 24 hours is great. As much as you can do is going to give you some kind of an effect because it's changing that relationship that you've created. But I think 24 hours is great, and doing stuff that is not stimulating for that 24 hours. So, yoga, going out in nature, reading, maybe writing, things that are more just off technology, pretty much, to level out your systems. And then you can go back to it afterwards and you can be more intentional with your relationship with it, hopefully.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of always been my thing. If I'm being completely honest, so I love technology. I'm in tech, and I feel like I use it 24/7 whenever I get a chance to, and I notice it spiking my dopamine levels like pretty often, which is why I try to take regular breaks off of like social media and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess I never thought of the idea of a dopamine detox. Like um, I always try to like assert willpower before
Mm-hmm.
I actually like do things and kind of systematize ways of recovery. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's one of like the major downfalls right now of of humans. I feel like we think we have more willpower than we really do.
Oh my
When
goodness.
what we really need is stronger boundaries than more willpower. Um, have you
Yes, yes.
experienced that before?
Oh my goodness. It's and it's not our fault. I think we're not aware that people have a limit of decisions they can make in a day. You just have a threshold. Everyone's different depending on, how much energy you have. If you're chronically ill, it's referred to usually as spoons, when you have just energy to do certain things. If we make decisions, like hard decisions, early in the day, usually we're pretty burnt out by the end of the day. And so that's when bad habits will come up and it'll be harder to fight them. A lot of people will binge at night because they are so tired of making all the difficult decisions during the day. So the amount that you can reduce making difficult decisions saves you with willpower. Then you have more energy to make those difficult decisions later on because you're keeping it balanced. But we don't have an unlimited supply of what did you call it?
Willpower, boundaries.
Willpower. Sorry, we don't have an unlimited amount of willpower, so we have to be smart with the way that we use it, and also considerate of ourselves. Right? If we know that we get lulls in the middle of the day, and that's when we usually, try to smoke or try to have a drink. Identifying that and being like, okay, why? Why is that? Maybe it's because I'm pushing myself too much early in the day. I really see human behavior as data. So whatever your body is doing, whatever you feel called to do, whatever your impulses are driving, it usually comes from somewhere. And if we're able to look inward, we can find the answer a lot of the time.
Wow. So what you said actually like reminded me of something that I never even thought about before. Do you know, like, I've seen the TikToks. Have you seen the TikToks of people being like, oh, at 3 a.m. in the morning, like they're waking up, like they're doing push-ups, like, oh, I got to get my family out the hood. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's after, like, it's almost like after a long day of not making good decisions, your body is like, wow, okay, we need to change this. We need to spark this up. Right. We need to do something like right now. And it's almost the exact opposite, where if you wake up at 4 or 5 a.m., you go to the gym, you go for a run, you do all these good things. By 7, 8, 9, 10, you're like, wow, I deserve to sit here for 4 hours and play, video games and go on TikTok. And there's health, and then there's a balance. There needs to be like a balance to it.
Mm-hmm. And it all depends on like the way that you usually live your life. But a lot of people will judge themselves and be like, oh, I don't make any good decisions during the day. And then in the middle of the night, then I want to get up and change the world. It's like, okay, why is that? Let's work with that. Maybe you have energy spikes at night. Maybe it has to do with your sugar intake. Maybe it has to do with the amount you sleep, whatever. But like, we can work to figure that out. You're not stuck in that state. And I think that's where people get stuck a lot of the time, where with the way that mental health is seen now, it's about like diagnosing yourself or seeing symptoms and being like, okay, that's me. And here we are. I'm stuck like this. And it's paralyzing and it's scary if you see it that way. I think it's important to consider that like we're like living problems to solve a little bit. Like there's so many different aspects that go into us, not even including our environment. And if you start to analyze that rather than judging yourself for what's going on or how you're feeling, it can be really liberating.
I could see how people equate their problem to their identity. And because that's like the problem of the day, right? Identity is kind of what this generation is like struggling with, I would say. It's a lot easier to say, I am this, rather than I am dealing with this, right? Because once you get healed from that, then who are you, right? It's almost scarier to have no identity than to have a flawed one in that.
Yeah, and your brain doesn't like that. Your brain wants to stay with what it knows because it's safe. So doing anything that's abnormal or out of the, your usual state is always going to feel uncomfortable and like, I shouldn't be doing this because it's not me. But that's a good sign, because usually that's your brain, warning you, this is different. I don't know if we should be doing this. And all you have to say is, that's the point. That's what we're trying to do.
We're good. That's so dope. That's so dope. So a little bit of a pivot, right? Because I also want to talk about like how socioeconomic status and potentially like race plays into this as well. I feel like there is a stigma, especially within like the Black community, or I say like all ethnic communities, right? Where like mental health isn't really discussed. And I know that's
Mhm.
kind of changing now, but how do you think that like socioeconomic factors, like racial, systemic issues like that play into the mental health debate and debacle?
It's everything. It's everything. And it sucks because the way psychology is built now, it's just not supportive of people of color or people who can't afford therapy. And there's a lot of movement now for the decolonization of psychology and for, acknowledging what capitalism has done to our mental health. Um, but I think the reason why it's been stigmatized in those communities is for survival. Like
Wow.
if you have to be conscious of what you're experiencing and what you're feeling at all times when you're dealing with trauma, as often as you are in those communities, you won't survive. You won't. Like maybe physically and mentally, you're not going to be well. And our parents taught us not to pay attention to those things or not to value those things because that's what they needed to survive. They could not live in their environment constantly aware of how they were feeling or what was going on in their minds because it would have been torture. And
Exhausting.
now we have the freedom to, investigate that a little bit and connect with that generational trauma more. But I think a lot of us are holding on to that frustration of like, why didn't you tell me my feelings were important? Why didn't you highlight that my emotions were valid? Why didn't we talk about this? Why didn't you teach me how to deal with my emotions? And I think a more a more gentle lens is needed when we're looking at the older generations and ourselves for not understanding or not having the background in it. We've got to come from a place of empathy and a place of acknowledgement that we come from different experiences. And psychology was framed around white men. So a lot of the diagnoses, the criteria, and the studies done weren't based on us. We're not represented well. And that's changing now, but I understand why those communities don't feel included in mental health and psychology as a whole. And I think it's our responsibility as people in that community who have educated ourselves and know the importance of it to continue talking about it and bring it into our families, and let them know like it's safe now. You can acknowledge your health, you can acknowledge your mental health, you can take care of yourself and it not be something that you're punished for. But yeah, I think it can be really difficult in those situations. So I don't judge anyone for pushing away or feeling uncomfortable when discussing mental health.
So in the same sense that you need like empathy for some of these conversations to be had with like your parents, grandparents, et cetera, you also need like a sense of self accountability, right? Because your parents grew up in a different era. You're growing up with access to these types of resources.
Mhm.
You need to see that as opportunity rather than a lack of opportunity before, right? And kind of move forward with what you have and are given in the present moment. Uh, Given the
Back to
fact
that
that,
mind,
what was that?
it's just back to that mindfulness.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, like, given the fact that it's still stigmatized in Black communities. I'm Black, so I'm just gonna say Black communities, and or even take it a step further, like African communities, because there is like a major flow there still happening. Well, no, I can't use flow because we defined flow as completely different in this
Different
conversation.
flow.
Yeah, so there's like a completely different ideology, right, surrounding mental health there. It's almost like once you start experiencing something, you're done. You're
The
done
debt.
for. Exactly. Go pray it
Mhm.
out. Go pray it out, or go read your Bible or something like that. Because obviously, and while we do understand that it is an aberration, right? We understand that it is not necessarily the norm to be experiencing or dealing with some of these
Mhm.
things, right? We can't just we unfortunately can't rely on religion, right, to solve it, right? Some of these are medical diagnoses, the same way where I wouldn't break my leg and start praying to God to heal my leg. I would probably pray on the way to the emergency room,
Use your
right?
resources. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that there is a solid mix between theology and therapy that
Hmm.
a lot of people, for some reason, just don't seem to grasp in the African Christian communities. And it bothers me every time I see it. But I am hopeful because I do see a small remnant of people that are now starting to like realize that, hey guys, we can't pray everything away. Some things have to be talked through. Some things have to be
Hmm.
worked through. And I just pray that that happens in my generation because I know my kids, we gonna be talking
Oh,
every
we're gonna
night.
talk.
We gonna be talking. They gonna
Yeah.
get yeah. They gonna get space to talk.
But
Yeah,
imagine the people of the older generations who were never expected to be introspective at all, or to communicate their feelings, or to have an empathetic lens at all. That can be really scary. And then
yeah,
it also makes you question the rest of your life. Like, have I been neglecting this part of me forever? Who am I if I include my emotions or, my desires? These are like untouched things for a lot
yeah,
of people.
yeah. It feels like taboo, right? In the
Yeah.
sense, and I is that the how do I put this while being? I want to be very inclusive about this, but also not incorrect. Um, is that the reason why people identify with more things than normal because they're trying to look inward, don't necessarily have the tools, education, or
Hmm.
context, right? And they're picking up things from different resources that they have, TikTok, a friend, a big cousin, et cetera, et cetera. And they're attaching all these things to, you know, their identity, and they're morphing. They're kind of like building it as they go along rather than kind of knowing who you are from the jump and then building off of that. You're almost like picking and choosing from all of these different places to create
Yeah.
this image of who you would like to be rather than just actually living in who you are. Do you think
Hmm.
that that also plays a piece in it?
Definitely. I think, especially, I've seen on TikTok like this aesthetic culture where like it's I can't remember exactly like what the names are, but there's like the queen bee aesthetic, or like the
What
baddie
is that?
aesthetic. And it's like identities that people are choosing because they're like, oh, I like how this looks. I like how this person would dress. I like how this person behaves. And then they try to emulate that archetype. And I think teenagers always go through that process, right? Like they're trying to find their identity, they're testing things out. We all know people in high school who um, presented completely differently than they do now, and
I
it's
used
just
to
because we're
skateboard.
figuring ourselves out. But I think social media has made it more dangerous for people in that mode because they have access to all of this to choose from and just be
Mhm.
like, oh, I like this. I can pick from this. I can do this. And they're not looking inward to be like, what feels real to me? What feels good and valid to me? And that can be scary because they are like, they're seeking something. They want to attach themselves to something. And if they find something that's not correct or that's, bad for them, they might identify with that. And then that causes a lot of problems.
I I recognize that you've done tons of research on this. I recognize that you've had a lot of like obviously like live counseling sessions with people, and
Mm-hmm.
have talked to people through a lot of these types of issues. What I want to know now is how you deal with it, how you carry the weight of these types of conversations on a pseudo daily basis, and how do you not lose your mind, family?
Yeah. I did for a little bit. I genuinely did. But it's because I didn't learn how to like keep one toe in the water and not fully submerge myself. So, like a lot of people use the term empath now, but like I think that fully encompasses who I am and the way that I function. And I like to just sit in it with people. So if you're hurting, I'm here with you. We're going to sit in it together and we're going to hurt together. And it can be very welcoming for people, and it helps them to open up. But unfortunately, it also helps them to kind of put their bag of rocks on you. So I was carrying a lot of people's bag of rocks, and I wasn't aware of it until I got a gastro disease. And my stomach completely stopped digesting, just like, no more. We don't want to take any food anymore. And this was in my internship in my master's program. So I was deep in it. I was in classes, I was doing counseling, and I was commuting, like, I think every day.
Wow.
And I couldn't eat. I couldn't digest. I would throw up everything that I was eating. It was just horrible. And I went to a bunch of tests, and nobody knew why I was doing this. Like, I have gastroparesis, and they diagnosed me, but there was no source. They had no idea what it was. And after like a bunch of different tests and medications trying and like therapy, I realized that it was all of the trauma that I was holding in from other people that I was working with that was like weighing on me physically that I wasn't processing because it's not my trauma. So I was like, oh, okay,
Wow.
like, yeah, I'm just intaking this, I'm hearing it, I'm absorbing it, and then I'm moving on. And I thought that that was okay. And it absolutely wasn't. And my body said, no, it said, we're not doing this anymore.
Wow.
And I had to stop. So I learned at that moment how to, the way they describe it in therapy is not jumping in the pool with the person, but like extending your hand so that you can pull them out and they know that you're there with them, but you're not going to drown with them. And I think that's the way that anyone can be a good support system to someone, is being able to calm yourself and center yourself so that you're grounded, and then offering them that hand so that they just have something to grab onto. You know, like if you're a lifeguard, you're not going to always jump in after someone. You can throw in a little floaty and they can grab on, and that's safer for everyone. And that's the perspective that I had to take. And since then, I've been kind of walking around the world with this little bubble around me, this like metaphysical bubble that I use to protect myself from other people's stuff, because I still want to be involved. I still want to be there for you. I still care very deeply, but I don't want to hurt and I don't want to get myself sick. So I need to learn how to create space for myself while also creating space for you or anybody else who I'm speaking to feel heard and validated without me taking your bag of rocks for myself.
Do you know like practically what that sounds like in my head? That sounds like you are talking to somebody, and then as soon as you're done talking to them, right? Like you're helping them, like you're in the moment, like you're telling them, hey, maybe try this, da da da. You're listening to them, but you're telling yourself in the back of your mind, like, this is not my thing, right? And like as soon as the session is over, you're like, all right, bro, like I'll see you, I'll catch you later, and you're not like ingesting that, because it's crazy. It's not enough to like process your own stuff, right? You also have to process other people's trauma as well, right? Like
especially if it resonates with you.
Right? Like we have to be careful enough to not only protect our ears, protect our eyes, protect what we say, right? From our daily encounters, from our issues. But now in your profession, you have to make sure that you do it 24/7 across the board. And I applaud you. I applaud you for taking that step back, because geez, man, I could not imagine the weight that you were carrying and just continuing to carry. And people don't care because they're paying you, right? So it's like, this is your job. You almost, this is what you signed up for. So what does that look like practically? You know, like like creating that metaphysical bubble. What does that look like?
Okay. Well, for me, it includes before I interact with someone, especially if I know that they're emotionally dysregulated, I will take a couple of centering breaths, make sure that I'm activating my parasympathetic nervous system so that my body feels safe. And then I go in there and I make sure to like only ask questions. We're always asking questions, never, offering advice or offering judgment. It's always just having them process through what they're experiencing and not attaching myself to any of that. So, I would have clients that struggled with eating disorders. And, what you really want to say is like, eat, please. I beg you. I can't do that. And also, if I do that, I'm emotionally tying myself into that now. What I can do is ask you, how do you feel when you don't eat? Like, how does that affect your day to day? So that it causes you to reflect on how it makes you feel. And then it's more of a journey for you rather than a journey for me to try to fix something for you. And I think that a lot of the time we fall into that hole of wanting to fix something for someone or wanting to make it go away, when all we really need to do is provide that space to let them know that we're here, that they can speak, that we're interested and we're willing to hold them. But that's really all we can do.
Wow. What does that look like for somebody that's not professionally trained? How can I do that?
Yeah, questions. Still, I feel like it's always coming from a place of questioning, and also keeping in that mindfulness, keeping that always in the back of your mind that whatever they're sharing with me, I'm not going to judge. I'm going to accept it as what it is. I'm not going to take it personally because realistically, almost 100% of what people are saying has nothing to do with you, and it's a projection of how they feel about themselves. And just keeping your ego out of it as much as possible while also expressing empathy to them and letting them know that what they're feeling is valid, because that's almost always all we're looking for. It's really hard to validate our own feelings. And so if I'm feeling sad, I'm probably going to be like, why am I sad? I don't deserve to be sad. I don't have a reason to be sad. When all I really need to hear is someone being like, oh, are you sad? That's okay. That's fine. It's all right to be sad. Express yourself. And that allowance is so healing. Just that minimal thing.
Wow. So I could imagine that that's also the same for like your significant other as well. And significant others for people that are in like that wellness space. How can they also kind of contribute to the wellness of their spouse or significant other?
It's hard. It's hard because it's that double consciousness that you mentioned before of making sure that you're okay while also trying to be there for them. And when it's your partner, it's more difficult because it's hard to get yourself out of that. It's hard to take your ego out of it because you care about what they feel. You care about what they think. And so if they're saying that they're unhappy or that they desire something more, you're naturally going to interpret that as, well, what does that mean about me? What does that mean about our relationship? And you go down this whole path in your head that's going to change the way that you respond to them probably. Even if you're trying to be accepting and kind, if you're coming from a place of insecurity in that moment, you're going to ask, well, why? Why do you feel that way? Like, we have all these things. You should be happy, whatever. Instead of that, reminding yourself, her being happy has nothing to do with me or our life or probably anything that's happening in this moment right now. She's feeling unhappy for whatever's going on in her internally, and she just needs to be validated for that and held. And that feeling will probably go away in like 30 seconds. That's the true lifetime of a feeling. If you acknowledge it and express it, it usually doesn't last over like a minute.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that.
Well, most of the time is spent fighting the feeling and telling yourself that you shouldn't feel that way or judging it.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to start timing my feelings.
You should.
I'm going to time them and see.
Just make sure you're feeling them. Do you know how to feel your feelings?
No, I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to feel my feelings. How do you feel feelings?
So I was so messed up about that for so long because in therapy, they tell you that all the time. Just feel your feelings. Just experience them. And I was like, I'm feeling them all the time. I'm constantly feeling feelings. What are you talking about? But really, it's about breathing in. So when an emotion comes up, like right now, I'm anxious because we're on camera together. Mm-hmm. So I can breathe. I can identify. How do I know that I feel anxious? My voice is a little shaky. There's like knots in my stomach. I'm a little sweaty. What else? My brain is struggling to think of words. Those are signs that I'm feeling anxious. Okay, I can acknowledge those signs, can breathe through them with no judgment. Just, all right, I feel these things. Taking deep breaths to try to activate that parasympathetic system. And then identifying as you're breathing how those things change in your body. So just me acknowledging the fact that I'm anxious has helped me to shake a little less. And so my stomach feels a little less tight. And as I sit with that emotion and I validate it and I comfort myself, there are different soothing techniques. So for me, I like to rub my hands. Some people like to rock back and forth. Some people like to rub their upper arms. What's another soothing mechanism? There's a lot of different ones.
Like tapping your foot?
Tapping your foot, absolutely. Picking at your nails, different things like that. Calming the body down until you're able to find that peace again. And then you felt your feelings.
Wow.
It's a lot more manual than you expect.
Yeah, I thought it was all like in your head. I thought it was...
Same.
Interesting.
We intellectualize a lot.
Why don't we learn this? When did you learn this?
Why don't we learn this? This is really like why I'm so passionate about the Mindful Minute, is because like the stuff isn't taught and it's so simple.
You're going to have to give a little context. Tell us what the Mindful Minute is. Give us all the context in the world.
Okay, yeah. So the Mindful Minute in my goal is a community of people who all care about holistic wellness, who are interested in mental health or just like well-being overall, who have some kind of struggle that they're dealing with that they want to find answers for or they want to find relief for. And I want to create content for them that they can relate to, that can educate them on psychology and holistic well-being overall, and to have a community of people that you can go to, you know, when you feel like there's not an outlet. I think a lot of social media, and we talked about before, can be very isolating and make you compare yourself, and there's always like this perfect thing that we're searching for in different social media fields, I guess. And I just don't want that for the Mindful Minute. I want it to be very natural. I want it to be something that like you can come in and talk about just the weirdest things that you probably wouldn't talk about anywhere else, but you know that it's accepted in this community, and you know that you're going to get answers, you're going to be heard. I feel like that place is missing currently on the internet, and I know that I would like to have it. So if it's only for me, then that's cool too.
Absolutely. Sounds amazing. Oh, hold on. That's my wife. Hey, babe, you want to come say hi?
Hello.
Yeah. We're still recording. Come say hi to Mariah.
Hello, beautiful.
She said hello, beautiful. How you doing? Sorry, in the headphones. Yeah. Okay. So, she has
Are
to go
you
to
being
Pilates.
summoned?
No. Yeah. My son. You could just bring him in. I'll hold him. He's sleeping? Okay. Perfect. I'll be out. Love you.
Oh my goodness.
Cool.
Please bring the sun.
Yeah. No, he's sleeping. But yeah, she has to go to Pilates, so I gotta go watch him. But not so. Yeah, literally. But listen, this was amazing. Can we wrap up with the if I were a boy, if I were a girl?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you were a girl, how would you distill this entire conversation in 3 sentences to a 10-year-old version of Mariah?
Mm-hmm. I would start with my favorite quote now that I try to live by. It's everything is medicine. And I feel like a little girl would really hold on to that, with like everything that happens and all of the trials and tribulations that come up. It's just everything is medicine. You can find a way to interpret it as something that benefits you, something that's going to grow you, something that's going to help you learn and experience so that you can help somebody else, in the future. I think there's 2 ways to see life. It's everything is hell or everything is medicine. And I would much rather see everything as medicine.
Wow. That's beautiful. The way I interpreted that was anything from reading a book to kicking a soccer ball to eating a cheesecake.
With the right intention.
With the right intention, it will be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love this. I am so excited for the Mindful Minute to come out. If this was a snippet of what is to come, I am looking so forward to it, honestly.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much for taking the time out to talk to me today. Amen. You want to shout yourself out a little bit? Where can people find more about you?
You can find me on, what's the Mindful Minute tag? Let's find out. I want to be sure. You can find me on The Mindful Minute on Instagram and on YouTube as well. And I'll be creating YouTube, TikTok, Instagram content starting soon. So if you're interested, please follow.
Lovely. Mariah, thank you so much. We will talk later. Everybody, the Driven Youth people, I hope you take a second and really just think about everything that we talked about today. Listen, your mental health is of utmost imperative and importance. If you're looking to actualize success in any area of your life, it needs to be sustained success. The only way you're going to be able to sustain it is if you have the relationships around you, if you've built up the mechanisms and the character that allows you to sustain it. Please take the time, take the effort, and improve and invest in your mental health. It will serve you in the long run. Thank you for watching. Mariah, thank you again. Love you, family. Kiss Joel one time on the cheek for me and tell him I love him. And I will catch you guys later. Peace.